Hi, everyone. Please take your seats. My name's Peter Drake. I'm the provost at the New York Academy of Art, and I'd like to welcome you to our spring lecture series. Tonight, we are very pleased to have Matt Hansel with us, lecturing about his work. Matt lives and works in Brooklyn. He earned his BFA from Cooper Union and his MFA from Yale. He's been featured extensively in solo exhibitions, including at The Hole in New York, the Brand New Gallery in Milan, and PM/AM in London. Hansel has also been featured in many group shows around the world, including Wasserman Projects, Detroit, Galerie Droste, Wuppertal, Germany, +1 Gallery, Antwerp, Belgium, Sophia Contemporary in London, and Gagosian Gallery in Athens, Greece. He's also was featured in 2020 Vision, curated by our very own David Kratz, which I was included in also. So please give a warm welcome to Matt Hansel.
Peter, thanks everybody for coming out. It's an honor to be able to talk to you tonight. So I'm going to start by hoping my computer turns on. Okay, good. Just briefly about me. I grew up in West Virginia, came to New York for undergrad. Like Peter said, I'm now living in Brooklyn, painting and working. I'm going to talk today a little bit about my work through the lens of the morbid delectatio. Let's see. All right, did I hit that twice? Good. All right. The human condition allows for a paradoxical reaction to the grotesque, the dual emotions of repulsion and attraction. Art as a medium is uniquely adept at allowing us to engage in this contradictory response through what can best be characterized as a type of transfiguration. The traditional idea that art fundamentally seeks beauty seems a rational, if slightly naive conclusion, until one considers that the act of seduction is often decoupled from rationality. And through art, we can be attracted to that which, if seen in the flesh, would repulse us. The morbid delectatio appears in Aristotle's Poetics, where he writes, "A sign of this is what happens in the experience through mimesis. We contemplate with pleasure the most accurate images of those same things that if we look at them with disgust, for example, representations of wild animals and corpses. In this insight, we see that our curiosity with the unknown, things that may kill or even death itself, can lead us to be enchanted by the grotesque. And it is mimesis, the representation of the real world through art, that allows us the distance to engage in this transfiguration." We can see this attraction in almost all forms of our cultural production, in the films we make and watch, in the games we design and play, in the trashy paperback books we write and read. This is a screen cap of the most popular podcasts on Apple this week. 10 of the top 18 most listened to podcasts focus on murder, torture, and true crime. And even more frightening, coming in at number 12, is a podcast called Juicy Scoop. Hieronymus Bosch's work seems to be a perfect exemplar of the morbid delectatio, and makes me ask why, when confronted with one of his triptychs, in which the work is flanked on either side with the bountiful delights of heaven and chaotic misfortunes of hell, my eye continually wanders back to the netherworld, constantly searching out the next act of cheeky depravity. Why am I finding delight in the grotesque creatures who are meant to fill me with the anxiety of eternal damnation? The miniature worlds convey a morbid splendor, and frankly, the demons seem to be having a lot more fun. The Garden of Earthly Delights painted by Bosch around 1500 may seem like a psychedelic fever dream to us now. However, as viewed by someone alive during the Renaissance, it would have been seen as a clear warning against the indulgence in ephemeral pleasures of the flesh. This painting would have been easily understood as a morality play, which served as propaganda for the conservative Christian views of the day. The panel to the left, depicting Adam and Eve before the fall, Eve being positioned at the right of God, is a scene of tranquility where man and beast exist in harmony alongside one another in perfect balance. The natural order of things is clear and maintained through piety. The center panel, being a construct of Bosch's imagination, portrays humankind ignoring God's will participating in all sorts of odd and illicit behaviors, which illustrate many well-known Christian tropes through their symbolism. The animals now serve humans and are ridden by a horde of men in the center, encircling a pond of women, which represent the bath of Venus, and a nod to the pagan ritual of the maypole. They carry fish, which alludes to the reversal of order amongst God's creatures. They devour lush, soft fruit, symbolizing flesh, and congregate and dance in groups, often disappearing into the secrecy of various objects. The glass domes are a reference to alchemist tools, who were viewed with suspicion by the church and thought of as meddling with nature. Adam and Eve appear in the lower right corner, and Adam is clearly pointing at Eve as if to say, "This is all your fault." Mayhem erupts around one perfectly balanced, unbroken egg, which sits directly at the center of the canvas. So if you draw this way and this way, this egg sits in the center. The egg, being a symbol of perfection, is diminutive and outmatched by its chaotic surroundings. The panel to the right depicts hell, where the souls of those who indulge in these earthly pleasures serve their eternal sentence. The sinners are shown being devoured by the Prince of Darkness, crucified and crushed by giant instruments, and forced to skate blindfolded on a frozen lake. It is this side which is nearly impossible for the viewer to look away from. This is clearly Bosch telling the viewer to stop their wicked ways. However, the illustrative nature of Bosch's warning pales in comparison to the conviction of his painting. He finds too much joy in depicting the hazards of imprudence and wanton excess. Ironically, more than just falling short of his goal, his painting opens a door into a come-hither world too alluring to resist. On the left, Eve looking chastened and pale. On the right, dancing with the dragon to a song played on a nose horn. A monkey on an elephant's back, it's pretty cool. Or a woman with a toad on her chest being hugged by a demon while someone defecates coins into a sewer of souls. An angry giraffe. Or a naughty prince of darkness eating the soul of a man while birds fly out of his butt. I think the choice is clear. When left unencumbered, my imagination often veers towards the aberrant. I think of this inclination as a failure, not a bug. As a feature, not a bug. It's in our unattended moments that we allow ourselves the freedom to contemplate the object. We allow ourselves to flirt with our demons, to be seduced by them. Pursuant to this point, the critic Per Salibert wrote, "The redemption of the flesh through the raw materiality present in art can lead the spectator to a state in which his physical or moral integrity is altered. The abject is the process, always in transit, which dominates the obscene instance of the object. That's why the subject is drawn to it, instead of rejecting it in a sort of seductive disgust," which I love that phrase, seductive disgust. It is this traditional state between disgust and delight, pleasure and refusal, eros and thanatos, that makes the grotesque so intoxicating. Art persuades us of its beauty and allows us to delight in its paradox. In this paradoxical world, it's this paradoxical world that I am most interested in, where the freedom exists to fall in love with the unlovable and seek the unknowable, a place where one can eschew the coldness of classical beauty and indulge guilt-free in the allure of the repulsive, a hinterland where you can happily live alongside your demons, or at least date them for a while. My favorite painters are those who endeavor to create alternate realities and succeed in making them convincing in their own terms. By doing this, they allow us to examine our understanding of the world around us and question the orthodoxies which run quietly in the background. Bosch did this by overwhelming the viewer with tiny worlds within worlds, a layer cake of morality and virtue. Artists throughout history have sought to depict this struggle, images of mankind fighting against, being tormented, harassed, and devoured by our demons. These works allow us to indulge in our gruesome delight. But the message is clear. Follow the ethical correctness of the day or face the consequences. I'm suggesting an opposing view, one that pushes back against the prevailing impulses we have as a society, to impose moral codes on one another which lead to fear, shame, and guilt. These should be replaced with a stringent adherence to internal acceptance, where the modern notion of moderating and suppressing our natural impulses towards the aberrant are replaced with the idea that we should acknowledge those tendencies and learn to embrace them. My work is celebratory and complementary of a part of the human condition that is often seen as unsettling or suspicious. Art seduces us and allows us to find beauty in unexpected, contradictory places. In his book, The Art of Seduction, Robert Greene wrote, "Seduction is a game of psychology, not beauty, and is within the grasp of any person to be a master at the game. All that is required is that you look at the world differently through the eyes of a seducer." With that in mind, I made this painting. It's called Soloist. This was the first painting I made of this new body of work. I made it in 2020, just after everything locked down, and I think it was sort of a response to the apocalyptic feel of Brooklyn at the time, and I felt as though I needed to make something that I could both made me laugh, but still recognize this bizarre and unsettling situation. This painting is it's clearly a reference to Adam and Eve, but it releases them from their moral conundrum. It also felt like we were all standing around helplessly trying to, smile and laugh off, an absolutely horrific situation. This painting is called "If You Can't Be With the One You Love, Then Love the One You're With." It's 92 inches tall by 54 inches wide. These paintings are about living with and learning to celebrate our demons. I suppose it's a form of radical self-acceptance, one where we learn to forgive ourselves. Research shows that the most two frequent regrets that we have at the end of our lives are, one, a wish to have spent more time with our loved ones, and two, a wish that we had been easier on ourselves. What a world it would be if we could relieve ourselves of these feelings of remorse, a remedy to the moralistic weight which we place upon ourselves, a world where life is lived without constant tinge of regret and worry about things that we cannot change and decisions we wish we hadn't made. This is the world I'm painting and the proposal I'm making. This is called "We Are But Souls Who Dwell Within Our Dust," and it is 52 by 42. And I also just included a lot of details because there's a lot of stuff going on in the margins. And I won't delve too much into the symbolism of the paintings because it would take a long time. Obviously, those are eyes, and anyway, we'll move on. This painting, "To Be a Vessel Whose Only Intent is to Hold Your Heavenly Gaze," 60 by 48 inches. This painting is a reference to the sin of vanity being punished by eternity of being forced to gaze at one's reflection. That's actually in the corner of Bosch's painting, where a woman sort of sits and faces a guy who looks like he's bent over and he has a glass bulb for a butt, and she's sort of staring at it. That's her punishment. Only in this version, the demon is actually using the gazing ball as a way of surprising the woman with flowers. And instead of hell, they're at some beach, in a state park in Southern California. Content is a man whose pleasures are simple. This is 60 by 48. This is my version of a painting of a demon devouring a man's soul, only more fun and flirty. It's like a summer camp where people hook up with their demons. Maybe that's just a regular summer camp. Detail. This painting is called "The Water's Edge." It's 70 by 58. I like the idea of a beautiful woman presenting a leaf to a decrepit old demon who can't believe his dumb luck. He's got this "who, me?" look on his face, which is, I think a lot of men know that feeling. Even these guys can't believe it. This painting is Those Who Set the Table Never Dine Alone. It's 60 by 48 inches. This is a demon dinner party with Jell-O and Ritz crackers. Classy but casual. Detail. Al has been overserved slightly. Okay, this painting is Memory Foam Never Forgets the Fleeting Moments a Lover Regrets. It's 86 inches wide by 62 inches tall, which depicts an innocent pillow fight amongst friends. I wanted, the compositionally, I sort of wanted this to feel like a giant mass that sort of filled the canvas and sort of had small holes and crevices looking into other worlds, which is, something I think a lot about. Some of my later paintings will talk about that as well, where I sort of like the microcosm and the macrocosm, and this idea that these worlds sort of exist within worlds, which sort of relates to these miniature worlds of the paintings of Bosch, and then these big 20th century spaces that exist in photography and film and painting. So this is one of those crevices in the legs. Pinky ring. Okay. This painting is the Morbid Delectatio. It's 32 by 26. It's a cocktail party in which guests mingle below a miniature world, heaven and earth, or heaven on earth. It has that traditional bifurcation of space that occurs in a lot of traditional landscape paintings, especially ones that sort of depict the separation of heaven from earth. That which you seek rarely comes in the form you expect. This painting is 60 by 48 inches. When I talk about being seduced by the object, the concept of objection literally means the state of being cast off. This notion extends to body functions or the aspects of the body that are considered impure in a modern, sanitized society, things that we are ashamed of. In this painting, they're used to thrill and entice. Okay, to make room for the garden, you must first burn down the house, which is 70 by 58 inches, which sort of depicts a campground of sorts. I think a lot also about the role of the sublime in art and the concept of paradise, what that means, and whether paradise is simply a person feeling comfortable about being themselves, or is it an actual place? Is it internal, external, and how do we talk about that in the language of paint? This is a dead fish fairy. A sightseeing expedition across the River Styx. All right. This painting's called And the Lovers Lie Abed with All Their Griefs in Their Arms. It's 92 inches wide, 70 inches high. This painting was originally a woman being kissed by a demon at the bottom, but then I thought the demons were better relegated to a voyeuristic role in the back, looking on with a mix of shock and pleasure. The man's face, balancing the strawberry on that side, is an optical illusion where, viewed one way, the man's face is a smiling man with a smoking pipe, and then the other is sort of a man laying in agony. And this illusion is representative of the different realities existing in the same person, or the duality of emotion. or the duality of different worlds, which again is something I focus on a lot in the paintings. This guy can't believe his eyes. Guy in the back looks suspicious. Okay. This is a painting called A Sudden Reassessment of Man's Gifts. It's 130 inches wide by 78 inches tall. The demon is out of the cave, and he doesn't care who knows it. He's really feeling himself, and by the looks of it, so are the ladies. The guy in the iron chaps doesn't seem to be very happy about all the attention his buddy's getting. But I thought making a history painting about a guy who was jealous of a demon with fish feet was too good to pass up. This painting has shades of Cain and Abel, but more importantly, this demon ended up reminding me a lot of the character Old Greg. If any of you have seen that video. Some offerings left by the cave in order to entice the demon. Good looking fella. All right, this painting is called A Moment on This Relentless Earth is Forever Without You. It's 40 by 30 inches. This painting shows a demon wooing a woman by whispering the title of the painting in her ear. It incorporates the idea of a demon on one shoulder and an angel on the other, which is often depicted, it's been used since antiquity to sort of represent temptation and conscience, respectively. The angel looks like she's losing ground. This painting, To Love Fully, is to find yourself in uncharted waters, 40 by 30 inches. This painting shows someone preparing to literally go swimming in the sea of the grotesque. And again, with the miniature worlds, hard to see. This painting is called Careless Whispers. Shout out to George Michael. Again, representing the quiet voice of temptation. It's 40 by 30 inches. This painting is called Beggars in the House of Plenty. It's a day at the beach with the fam. It's 36 by 28. This painting is The Land Our Love Burns Will Remain Black for Years to Come, which is 60 inches by 48 inches. I was thinking again of the idea of paradise and the notion of the original sin. In this painting, the demon gives the half of the apple Eve ate back to her, and by doing so, undoing her misdeed, once again making paradise whole. The world of mankind living in harmony with their demons is brought about by an act of forgiveness. Of course, this is a metaphor for the internal forgiveness that I spoke about earlier. This painting is called The Ceremony. In the immortal words of the Queen Bee, if you liked it, then you should have put a ring on it. This guy liked it. Common matrimonial headdress. This painting is called The Mycophile. A mycophile is a devotee of mushrooms, especially one whose hobby is hunting wild edible mushrooms. And you'll recognize sort of this is the same bench area that was in an earlier painting of the man being devoured. This painting is called This Land is Ours for the Taking. It's smaller, it's 18 by 24. This little painting is an example of anthropomorphic landscape, which seemed to be a bit of a meme during the 17th century, where landscapes were given human attributes, creating a visual light switch that could be sort of flipped back between the two. I think it was sort of, landscape painting wasn't really a thing until the 17th century, and it was sort of, landscapes were traditionally sort of used as backgrounds in paintings, sort of behind the subject, and I think it was sort of this bridge where they were able to paint landscapes, but they had to somehow make a figure in them, so they were sort of made these paintings, which are strange. But anyway, in this painting, heaven embraces the earth, while humans and demons frolic together in the fields of giant mushrooms. This is a long title. The days of our youth are beyond our control. Those lost joys have drowned in the old swimming hole. I wish in my sorrow to strip to my soul and dive once again in the old swimming hole. I think the title says it all here. This painting, there's actually a section at the end where I sort of talk about my process, and I sort of have a series of painting of how a painting was made, and this happens to be the painting that we'll be looking at, how it was made in steps at the end. This painting is called The Affair. It's also a smaller one, 18 by 24. And you also see the motif of the rug reappears in a later series of paintings that I've just started recently. So I'll come back up. This little guy's building a bridge between the worlds here. This painting is As Above, So Below. As for Love, No One Knows. It's 70 inches tall by 45 inches wide. The title refers to the phrase "as above, so below," which is an ancient quote used to describe the idea that sort of what happens on a higher plane of existence also happens on a lower realm of existence, or what happens in large sense also occurs in a small sense. This painting is sort of equally divided along those lines. The central figure has the duality of what is seen and what is not seen, the external appearance and internal desire. Her suitor wears a black swan floaty, which is associated with the goddess Venus and symbolizes love, romance, and beauty. This painting is called Loretta, 70 by 58 inches. I think these paintings sort of start with the assumption that we're sort of not doing it right. They depict this alternate way to deal with our demons in a world which, instead of hiding from or repressing them, we embrace and learn to live with them. Not just coexist, but take them out in the town and show them off. In this painting, a man has named his boat after the one he loves and has filled it with a bounty of fruit and flowers. Loretta has a beehive made of owls. Cool. And then in the background, that's, sort of shows a group of elderly people engaged in sort of this antiquated, shame-inducing behavior of the past, while the young couple prepares to sail towards a more promising future. There's a guy playing a serenade on the edge of the boat. All right, cheese paintings. Drink break. All right, so this next series, I sort of started making. That series I started making in 2020, and then I had a show 2021. Thank you. And so the way I set it up was sort of the front gallery space was made of those paintings, and was sort of, I conceived of as sort of, sort of the, dividing the gallery space and sort of this idea of the sacred and the profane, sort of, and sort of the front was sort of the, as with the division of the Bosch painting, where you had sort of this sort of division between these worlds. I sort of wanted that to happen in the gallery too, so I had the demon painting sort of in the front, and in the back room, which was smaller, I sort of had a smaller, more, I don't know what it would be, like sacred looking room that had cheese paintings in it. So, cheese. Where am I? Stinky, pungent lumps made from curdled milk, laced with bacteria and aged with mold, that is universally loved and devoured. Cheese is a perfect symbol of the morbid delectatio. This painting, it's called You Don't Have to Go Home, But You Can't Stay Here. And it is 70 by 58. These paintings sort of take the wheels of cheese that appear in sort of Flemish style still life, Vanitas paintings of the 1700s, and sort of reimagine them as sort of modernist sculptures, and also, in tiny worlds that are only inhabited by those small enough to enter. This painting is We'll Make Heaven a Place on Earth. It's also 70 by 58. These works I use the white background as a reference to the language of advertising, which is another form of seduction. They sort of recall in particular the white sort of cornerless spaces of magazine advertisements. Volleyball. This painting is called Play On, My Truest Love. It is 36 by 28 inches. This painting is called A World to Which We Belong But Cannot Enter, although my 7-year-old daughter calls it Cheese Church. Probably a better title, to be honest. And so again, I'm sort of thinking about objects we conceive of as being small, but can be made into mountains or cathedrals, worlds that are defined by their own rules and adhere to their own logic, which is, of course, something that is painting's great for. This painting's a place where only we go, 36 by 28. taken the idea of the serpent, which is obviously taken from the story of original sin, and sort of changed it into a light. Man with a demon in his pants. This painting is We Live and Die in These Towns, 60 by 48 inches. Yeah, I also sort of see these works referencing hard-edged shape and color-filled painters like Al Held and Kenneth Noland and Ellsworth Kelly. But obviously these are a lot sort of dumpier, a little cheesier. That's bad. Okay. St. Sebastian there. And then this is a large form of this painting. I need truly marvelous lessons taught seem to those who learn them not, which is it's 190 by 60 inches. Rug paintings. Okay, so this is my the most recent group of paintings that I've started within the past year, and they sort of came directly out of the cheese paintings. They were sort of inspired by Dutch painters, in particular Vermeer and his contemporaries. And I remember seeing when I was an undergrad, went to the Met and saw the painting of Maid Asleep, which, I remember looking at the painting in the foreground, there's this beautifully painted rug, and I think, man, that rug could just be an entire painting, So I think I always had that idea in the back of my head, and then started making these. This painting is called When All the Flowers Are Cut, We'll Feast in the Garden of Stems. These paintings also have sort of an, offhanded, ham-fisted relationship to abstraction, and they're all over patterns and sort of shallow pictorial space. This is a smaller painting called Cave Dwellers, 18 by 24 inches. This painting's called A Kingdom Built on Love Need Not Stack a Single Stone. Again, sort of talking about this sort of proximity to shape and size in this relationship that we have. I love sort of the idea that, a wrinkle in a rug could be a cave or a passageway somewhere else. This is another small one called Grab Ass Garden, 18 by 24. finally, we toil as fools in the fields of our time, fistful of soil, sowing the seeds of our love, which is 60 by 44. Okay, so that's sort of the three bodies of work that I've been working on now. That's what I've made since 2020, essentially. Yeah, started pretty fast painter. A lot of time in the studio. So what I thought I'd do, I thought about process. I don't know if that's interesting or not to anyone, but I remember when I used to go to these things at school, I was like, I'd love for them to sort of spend a second talking about their process. So what I did was I went back on my iPhone. So these aren't the best photos, but I tried to find a painting that I had a lot of process shots of and sort of line those up so you could sort of see what, how it starts and all of that. So anyway, let's do that. That'll be it. So this is the swimming hole painting. So generally what I do is I sort of construct at least a large part of the painting first in Photoshop, and I'll put together, different forms, sort of get the composition generally where I want it. In this one, I had this sort of string of guys here, and these two trees, and then sort of build off of that sort of central composition, the central movement of that. And I wanted, sort of to have to hell, sort of a passageway to hell sort of in this back corner. Again, and then sort of heaven on the left, sort of, again, mirroring that, so that Boschian world. So anyway, so this is flash paint. So it's, I put it in pretty fast. This might be, 2 days of work, I would imagine. But, it's pretty quick, just sort of getting colors in, getting the drawings in. And you can see it's pretty thin, so it's kind of washy. But I like flash sort of as an underpainter because it's very absorbent, and doesn't have that sort of, acrylic sort of has that sheen that makes the paint slippery when you put it over it. This is almost like you're painting on a colored gesso. So for what that's worth. So this would be maybe, a day later, maybe that's a day's worth of work. So I would put in, sort of putting in the demon sort of in the lower left, then sort of working out the drawing, trying to figure out this guy sort of that's sitting at the gates of hell there. And I think sort of at this point I sort of had the inclination that the guy all the way to the left sort of needed not be human. So I'm thinking, maybe he needs to be sort of a demon as well. Yeah, so that's that. And a lot of these paints, what I'll do, starting off a canvas, for this one, I remember I sort of painted it flat, so I was doing a lot of the dragging of the water, sort of with, rags and tools. So, that's starting it that way. And this is sort of when oil starts coming in. So you can see I'm starting this one in the back, which isn't always the case, but so I'm sort of bringing my first layer of oil on top of that. Let me see if there's anything else I did in this one. I don't think so. Okay, this is probably 2 days later, maybe, sort of bringing the oil up around the sort of left-hand side of the painting, still leaving the figures sort of knocked in quickly, starting to tighten up the figure all the way to the right. Yeah. Maybe another day's worth of work there. guess I started painting on hell in the backgrounds and burning palm trees, which later get taken out, but that's sort of where it was at now. And then sort of work on that demon peeking around the corner. He gets changed too at some point. Yeah, so their hell gets sort of replaced by burning cauldron. And the demon out of the water gets changed. So, you know, you can sort of see at this point it's really starting to tighten up. I'm sort of changing the position of the central figure's leg. Knee is coming up. Looks like I'm drawing over the face of the purple demon. Yeah, so at this point, pretty much knocking in the details, bringing in sort of, you know, the shells and the things on the guy's, the demon's waist, and the crab and pinching the nipples of the purple demon. I think that's the next one. Swimming mask on a guy. Yep, that's it. So, whatever that's worth. All right, that's it. Thank you. Yeah, if anybody has any questions. Sure. Anybody want to moderate this? Yeah.
Thank you for showing the process. I still have a question about how much the final painting is similar to your imagined painting when you start.
That's a good question. It depends on the painting. Some paintings change a lot more drastically than others. I mean, what I like to do is sort of have at least a roadmap, you know, pretty well-defined roadmap laid out, because the process of painting that I use is one where I'm using a lot of glazing and a lot of scumbling, sort of thin technique, and it's not one where I can sort of easily take things out. So as you saw at sort of at the beginning, when I use flash paint, that kind of paint is a little easier to adjust. So I try and get the flash paint to a level where then I know I'm happy with the painting, and then I'm sort of bringing in sort of the magic of the oil paint on top of that, which I don't know if that answers the question, but they're pretty, I mean, when I work with a file and sort of get it sort of where I want, I sort of know where I'm headed. I'd say they're 80% look like what it's sort of the original idea or intent was.
So some of your figures really remind me of news magazines from the 60s.
Right.
Are you actually referencing some of those magazines like Sunshine and Hell?
Yeah, totally. So, yeah, there were these sort of nudist colonies that existed on the West Coast. And, you know, it was sort of this moment where one way of sort of skirting the decency laws, where they would put out these pamphlets, which were, you know, this is a, you know, naturalist way of living. So they put out these pamphlets, and there were people playing volleyball and eating watermelon naked, you know. And I sort of love those for two reasons. One, because the bodies look so much more natural, and I sort of love that about them. And then two, you know, I like the idea of making you know, to me these are history paintings where I'm combining sort of this version of the 20th century that is the most recent that I didn't live in. So I was born in 1977, so that's sort of right before I was alive. So to me, that's still history, but it's the most recent version of history. If that makes sense.
But it also has this weird feeling of, because grandma and grandpa are just as nude as like everybody else.
Yes.
That there's this surreal quality to, you know, people using power tools with no clothes on.
Yes. Yeah, it is. And, you know, I think that ties in again to that idea of, you know, the sublime and paradise and sort of, you know, sort of the original intent, you know, obviously the fall, the first thing that Adam and Eve realized when they left paradise was that they were nude. And so a lot of the paintings you'll see where the difference is they'll be sort of standing like this as opposed to this. And so there's sort of that built-in, when you see those photos of those people living that way, you sort of have this built-in idea of like, they've got something figured out that I don't, because, I'm not that confident. And I sort of am carrying around this sort of shame that I could never be doing that. So, there's something also kind of liberating and freeing about them, that I sort of like that nature, that spirit, that I want that sort of to be in the paintings, as part of.
And body acceptance, all that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I have two questions, please. Good to see you again.
You too.
The first one is, I really enjoyed the introduction and the idea of the grotesque versus beauty and favoring the grotesque. But I noticed a contrast between that and the choice of the figures being stereotypically beautiful. And I was wondering if you could speak to that. And the second question is process related, about how you get your Photoshop done. Is it based on pictures or just drawing or composition?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, what would be the answer to the first one? I mean, I think, I'm not intentionally trying to choose models that are good looking, but I guess maybe they are. And I don't know, maybe it just ends up that way through the process of my painting in a strange way. But I guess that's something to think about. In terms of, I guess it sort of ties in what we were just talking about. Like, I guess if you're in a lot of ways, if you're the kind of person who's willing to pose and or be photographed like that, then you have this built-in idea of yourself, and so that probably goes along with a certain type of person. So, yeah, and then what was the other?
The question is process related, how you work the Photoshop composition to use photographs.
Yeah, so I do. Yeah, so I'll combine in Photoshop. I'll combine photos that, like I'll find one of these magazines and I'll sort of combine photos from that. I'll do drawings, combine photos from that. I'll take, sort of references from different paintings, and stick those in, But generally, everything gets changed when it goes through the filter. But like a stand-in for a mountain, I'll grab a mountain, stick it in there. But when I'm working on it, I'll just sort of paint it my own way. So it's really a combination of all those things. Yeah, thanks.
So it seems like you said your work is in conversation with art history. Has it always been that way, or is there a moment in your career where that shifted to be more of an interest for you?
Yeah, I guess it's always been that way. I was doing, previous to this work, I was doing paintings that were historical. I was doing, it's hard to sort of describe them, but I was doing paintings that were sort of halfway painted, and they look like historical allegories of man and wrestling animals, sort of, and dealing with this idea of man versus nature. And sort of the top painting was unpainted, and then they were sort of long, and that was my first painting to show it the whole. And then before that, I was doing these sort of, they almost look like collage paintings, and they were sort of referencing where I was taking historical and 20th century imagery and sort of working with it. So yeah, it's always sort of had some sort of historical bent to it. Yeah.
How do you choose or decide like what scale which painting?
Yeah, I mean, in the general dumb rule of thumb for me is if it has a lot of stuff in it, it's bigger. Which and then the other thing I'll do is I'll make, some paintings when I work them out just are naturally sort of simpler. The idea is just of a thing. And those sort of paintings, I use a projector when I'm using, like if I do from my computer to do the drawing, and I'll project them with different sizes, roughly. So I just have a group of, things, and I'll sort of work on it that way. And that sort of helps me sort of make that decision about size. I do have that sort of situation where I'll think something is supposed to be a certain size, and I'll do the thing, I'll project up the thing, I'll put it on my easel, and I'll think, this is not right, there's something not right about it. I mean, there's also, I don't like sort of, there's a size of figure I don't love, like I don't love a Barbie doll size figure in a painting, like for me, so they either have to be this big or, this big, something like that. I don't know. So I sort of have that, it's just my own personal bias. So, yeah. Yep.
If I
I wanted to ask you how you like take something like a style that already exists and like make it your own. So you're like expanding those.
Yeah, I think, for him, like, I really like his, I didn't talk about too much in my work, but the way he builds a painting is really building a painting of symbols. So he's sort of stacking a symbol on top of a symbol, and I sort of like that use of that work, and I think it's, for me, like, the symbol of the egg that we talked about, that's, it's perfection. If there's an ancient symbol of that, if it has a crack in it, it sort of means if something's gone wrong with perfection. If there's a hole in it, it can either mean rebirth, or it depends on what's coming out of it, it can mean something else. So sort of twisting those small things that he created that, it's not just him, but he, a lot of artists sort of use that same set of symbols in their work. So I like working with those because they're sort of this well-tread, historical go-to. And like I said, I like using them in a manner that's not, I think they use them as like warnings, like about how to live your life, what not to do, sort of this idea of the Vanitas painting of the skull or the half-burnt candle, that, time's running out, and the wilted flower, because, and sort of warning a person about their life. And I sort of wanted to kind of do the opposite about that. Use those symbols and do the opposite thing. If that makes sense. All right, thank you.